For this, you are going to need some whole peppercini peppers. You're also going to need a stick of butter, a packet of ranch seasoning, as well as a packet of dry French onion soup mix, a chuck roast, some olive oil, and some salt and pepper. So I'm slowing down this clip, but I thought that I recorded myself searing this chuck roast, but I didn't. But basically what you do is you put it into a pot with some olive oil, season it with some salt and pepper, and you sear each side for about 2 minutes. So the first thing I did was I put in the chuck roast that I just seared. After that, I am going to add in the ranch dressing packet. Following that, I'm going to add in the onion soup mix. Then the whole stick of butter joins the party. Some peppercini pals join the mix. And after that, I add in a little bit of the peppercini juice from the jar. You're going to cook it on low for about 8 hours. So after it's been cooking for the 8 hours, you're going to take 2 forks or your hand mixer or whatever. I just use 2 forks because I don't want to use any extra appliances that I don't need to. And I am going to shred it. As you can see, it falls right apart. It was like melt in your mouth perfect. After I shredded it, I let it sit in its juices until I was ready to serve. So these are the Instapot mashed potatoes that I featured in my last video. After I made those, I froze the remaining, and this is just me reheating it with a little bit of milk, and they were perfect. So for the French style green beans, all I did was I just heated up the green beans, and then I added a whole packet of dry Italian mix, and that was it. This was so good, guys, and even better as leftovers. We made sandwiches on Italian rolls with mozzarella cheese, and it was so good. So for this recipe, you're going to need some garlic powder, some onion powder, some soy sauce, some sesame oil, some butter, some corn, or you could do a mix of different veggies. This Chinese sausage, this is my favorite brand, so I highly recommend this one. You're going to need some cold rice. It's very important that it is cold, and some salt and pepper. So to start this off, you're going to cut your Chinese sausage into quarters, and you're going to cut them into bite-sized pieces. I like my pieces a little bit larger, but if you want them smaller, you could do that as well. So to make this fried rice, I'm using a wok, but honestly, you could use a frying pan. It's not a big deal at all. I add a tablespoon of butter to it, and at this point I'm going to add in my Chinese sausage as well, and I'm going to work that around for a couple of minutes. After if you've had your sausage going for a couple of minutes, you're going to add your veggie. For this, I'm adding frozen corn. I did about half of a cup. Once my corn has been warmed up, I am going to add in that cold rice. At this point, I'm also going to start seasoning everything. So I'm going to add about a tablespoon of onion powder. I am also going to add about a tablespoon of garlic powder as well. I am also going to add about half a teaspoon of salt and pepper as well. You could adjust this to your liking at the end, so it is important that you taste your fried rice before you serve it. So once you have all that incorporated, you are going to add in your soy sauce. I put in about 2 to 3 tablespoons of soy sauce, but you can taste it and adjust it to your liking. Now I am going to move the rice over to the side, and one thing that I forgot to include in my ingredients was egg, so I ended up using 2 eggs. I'm just moving the rice over so that I have room to scramble the rice on the other side. And before I put the egg in there, I did melt a teaspoon of butter in there, and I did end up using 2 eggs. One wasn't enough, but I didn't film the second one. Now at the very end, when you're almost ready to serve, I add in a teaspoon of sesame oil. This is a finishing oil, so it's important that you don't actually cook with it because then it can become bitter. But this is the cherry on top. Like, you need the sesame oil. And this is the end result. It was so good. Everyone in my family completely devoured it. I served mine with some sriracha on top and also some of this like seaweed topping that my mom bought and left at my house. It was so good. For this recipe, you're going to need like these little rib pieces. It's like a strip of rib, but they're just cut smaller. You're also going to need a can of coconut soda, some salt and pepper, some olive oil, some fish sauce, some coconut coloring, oyster sauce, garlic, and some sugar. So the first thing you're going to do is cut up the little rib pieces. So you're going to cut in between the bone where the meat part is, and you're going to do that to both of your rib strips. So after you've cut up all those pieces, you're going to saute them in some olive oil and some salt and pepper. About 2 minutes in, I went ahead and added a teaspoon of garlic. After you've had that garlic working around for about 2 minutes, you're going to add some fish sauce. I added about 2 to 3 tablespoons of fish sauce. This kind of depends on how much meat you have. I then went in and added about 1 to 2 tablespoons of sugar. Now I'm going to add in about half a teaspoon of coconut coloring. This is just so that the meat has like a brown color, so that it looks more appealing. I feel like white meat doesn't look appealing, if that makes sense. So this is all that it is. I'm also going to add about a tablespoon of oyster sauce. Oyster sauce has like a natural sweetness to it, so that's why you always see me cooking with it, because it gives that nice like umami flavor that you see in a lot of Asian cooking. Next, I'm going to add in this whole can of coconut soda. The soda acts like a braising liquid for the ribs. Then I'm going to add in 2 Thai chili peppers. My mom grows these in her garden. You don't have to add it in. It doesn't make the dish spicy or anything, but I feel like it's one of those things where growing up, I've always seen it in tit kha, which is what this dish is called. So as an adult, I just always put it in, and my son eats this, kids eat this all the time, and it's not spicy, I promise. So you're going to let that go low and slow for maybe like half an hour, I would say. Now this I'm going to serve as a side dish. This is Chinese spinach. So it comes on a stem like this. So what you're going to do is you're basically going to pick the leaves off. You can eat the stem part if it's like smaller up top. I mean, people eat the whole entire thing all the time. I just feel like it's a little tough, so my family doesn't like the thicker part of the stem, but people literally use the whole stem, all the leaves and everything, but I just go through the process of picking them because that's what my family prefers. So after I'm done picking off the leaves, I am going to wash them in some cold water. I just do this a couple of times until the water becomes clear. There's like always some dirt or something hiding in between the leaves. I do want to say that you should do this with a light hand because they can bruise easily because the leaves are so fragile. So now that my ribs are cooking and my spinach leaves have been picked and washed, I am going to make my rice. So all that I'm doing is rinsing the rice a couple times until the water isn't cloudy anymore, and then I'm going to put it into my rice cooker. So as dinner draws near, you're going to saute the Chinese spinach. So to a wok, I have some olive oil. I added in the Chinese spinach, and now I'm adding in some salt and pepper. After about a minute or so, I'm going to add in a tablespoon of minced garlic. So when the spinach starts to really wilt, I am going to add a tablespoon of oyster sauce to finish them off. So this next ingredient is optional. I'm going to be adding some quail eggs to my tikal. These are just canned quail eggs that I found at my Oriental supermarket. They're in water. You could also add maybe 2 or 3 hard-boiled eggs if you don't want to do quail eggs, but I feel like the egg adds a nice creaminess to the dish, so I recommend it. Just be careful when you're stirring it around, of course, so that you don't break the egg, and let that work in for a couple of minutes. And this is the end result. This is one of my family's favorite meals, so of course we enjoyed it, and my family encourages you and your family to try it and step outside of your comfort zone.